So, last time we saw Whig candidate Zachary Taylor win the election by not really taking a side on slavery. He tried to sell his appeal to both sides, northern free states and southern slave states. It helped him to defeat Cass, 163 to 127. And now President Taylor is president, and he, of course, hopes to avoid congressional debate on the slavery question in California and New Mexico. This is a sticking point for a lot of people, and he doesn't want the arguments to hurt his ability to be president. So he urges leaders in the two territories to quickly apply for statehood. Now, once these lands become states, he figures that their citizens could decide whether they would allow slavery or not allow slavery, as democratic as you can be. Let the people choose for themselves. Let the people decide for themselves what they want. Don't have people in Washington, D.C., 3,000 miles away make decisions for them. Let them choose for themselves. New Mexico will not apply for statehood. However, California will. So in 1849, California becomes a state. And have you ever wondered why the San Francisco 49ers are named the San Francisco 49ers? It's because California and the subsequent gold rush happened in 1849. Now, Taylor's plan is going to run into a little bit of trouble here. They are going to apply for statehood, but there are other issues in Congress that the issue of California statehood is going to become, as the book says, tangled up. Um, Government is very, 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 very complex. There are many members of our Congress who separate from our president, and they all have competing interests. They all have people that they are accountable to, the voters, and they all have their own personal agendas. And this is why democracy is extremely difficult, and it's very, very, very hard to get what you want. Oftentimes, we see that they have to compromise on things, not always getting what you want, but moving steps forward, getting a little bit, but not getting everything. So Taylor's plan is going to run into these similar problems, but since slavery is such a strong issue and so important to so many people, it's going to really be tough for Zachary Taylor to get what he wants. Anti-slavery forces, northern anti-slavery forces, obviously want there to be no slavery. But right now, they are pushing to abolish slavery in the District of Columbia, which is Washington, D.C. This is a very, 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 what's the word? Disgraceful part of American culture. People from around the world will go to the United States Capitol, the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., and they will see live auctions of slaves where they are often stripped naked, asked to perform physical acts to show that they are strong and that they don't have many whip marks, which would denote a rebellious slave. They don't have any obvious diseases or issues that you could see from the outside, and that would get slave auctioneers the most money. This is common on the streets of Washington, D.C. They are selling slaves in the most humiliating and to the Northerners, humiliating and terrible possible way. To many slave owners, this is the only way to find out whether a slave is worth the tens of thousands of dollars they might pay for them. So this is the problem that our country is going through. Part of our nation thinks that this is humiliating to happen in the streets of our nation's capital, where people from around the world who don't have slavery themselves, because America is one of the last countries to give up slavery in this day and age, to be going on in a place that is basically representative of the entire United States. Southerners are also upset because there are no real strong laws that require runaway slaves or fugitive slaves to be returned. Often you will find that slaves run away to the North to escape from slavery into their freedom, and many people in the North are more than happy to allow them to enter into freedom. And the South is upset about this. They want their slaves, their property returned to them, and they don't like it when other people don't try to help them. So they want stronger laws for Northerners to give their slaves back. There will be other smaller issues in the New Mexico-Texas border and such that will also play a part of this. But the greatest obstacle is this balance of power. Of course, the balance of power is on every single topic we cover because this is how our country's government has been created. Since we didn't abolish slavery back in 1790s, we 1780s, we created a country that is part slave and part free. And neither side wants to be weaker than the other, and neither side can become stronger than the other if the other side is balanced. So this system is going to increase to 15 free states and 15 slave states. From the 1820s, when it was 11 to 11, is now grown to 15 to 15. When California comes in, it's going to upset the balance. They enter as a free state. The northern free states will have strength over the southern slave states. And New Mexico and Oregon and Utah are looking like they're going to be coming in next, all as free states. The South is looking a little bit hopeless here. They're going to be outvoted in the Senate, and that's not a place where the South wants to be. As tensions are going to reach a dangerous level, obviously some Southerners begin talking again of seceding or leaving the United States so that they don't have to deal with Northern states telling them to get rid of their slaves. Many debates are going to go on about this, if this is really a debate over being told how to live or just owning slaves. But I think it all runs in together. Should you be allowed to do what everybody else thinks you shouldn't do? And if everyone says you have to get rid of your slaves, do you have to get rid of your slaves? This is a troublesome part of our democracy. Are we free? How free are we? Do we have unlimited freedom? Do we have limited freedom? What are we really about? And this is going to be a conversation, as many historians and people in the media like to refer to it as, a discussion over how should our lives be. And in the real moment, in the real time, men and in the future, women are going to have to come up with solutions that get us through the day. One such person, as we know, is Henry Clay. He is now a senator, which is not quite the same as being the Speaker of the House of Representatives, though he's still very influential and he's still very much a part of our Congress, and he wants to settle these issues so we can move forward and get California, which is tons and tons and literal tons of gold in the mountains of California, all for the digging, all for the taxation, all for the benefit of our economy. And Henry Clay has always been a strong nationalist in terms of economy. So he is going to try to figure this out. There's 5 parts to it, so he comes up with a 5-part plan. First, we're going to take California as a free state. Second, the New Mexico territory would have no restrictions on slavery. No one's going to ban slavery at all. New Mexico-Texas border is going to be settled in favor of New Mexico. Not the biggest of deals in this slavery issue. Fourth, slave trade, but not slavery itself, will be abolished in the District of Columbia as part of Clay's plan, which means we will not be buying and selling slaves, but it is still going to have slavery. People will still be allowed to own slaves. Now, finally, Clay is going to push for a stronger fugitive slave law to help Southerners retrieve their fugitive runaway slaves. He's hoping that all these parts will make each side happy in different ways, and therefore they will be allowed to live with all the other parts they don't like. However, Clay's proposal is going to launch an extremely emotional debate in Congress and is going to go on for 7 months. This is not the easy peasy plan that Clay was maybe not expecting, but certainly hoping for. Opening the debate were people who we've seen before: Clay, other men like John C. Calhoun of South Carolina, and Daniel Webster, who we've met a few times, but they're all very much older. Calhoun is in his 70s. He's too sick to even give his own speeches. He'll ask younger men to read it for him. James Mason of Virginia will read aloud Calhoun's words. And Calhoun believes that the only way to save our country was to protect slavery. He sees this as the Southerners are going to get what they want, no matter what. And if you're going to keep our nation intact, we cannot anger Southern slave owners because they will secede from the nation and destroy our country. Calhoun warns that if the Southern states are going to be outnumbered in the Senate by admitting California as a free state, they're going to have to leave. There is no 2 ways around it. We are not going to sit there and be told what to do by a Northern Free State Congress. says Calhoun. 3 days later, Webster, a Northerner, gives an eloquent, well-spoken, well-argumented support of Clay's plan. He claims to speak not as a Massachusetts man, a Northerner, but as an American. And what he sees is that the only way to preserve our union um, is to get through this. He said he would rather hear of natural blasts and mildews, war, pestilence, and famine than to hear gentlemen talk of secession. He thinks that secession is never going to be okay with him, and he needs to uh, get everybody past this, but no one really knows how. Clay's plan could not pass as a complete package, obviously. Too many members of Congress objected to one part or another, and President Taylor, who opposes the plan and threatens to use force against the South if the states try to secede. So this plan is going nowhere right now. President Taylor will not give in. He'll follow the precedent of Jackson, using the military to force the South not to secede from the nation. But this does nothing for California. This does nothing for the Fugitive Slave Acts. This does nothing for most of what people want to get done. So we're kind of stuck in the mud mode here. But then things change. Taylor suddenly dies, the second president to die in office. And of course, when the president dies in office, the vice president takes over. In this case, Millard Fillmore. Millard Fillmore is going to support some type of compromise. He's not going to be so rigid as President Taylor. And now that he's president, it's his call. At the same time, we're going to meet a very new, very young senator from a newer state called Illinois, and his name is Stephen A. Douglas. Now, Stephen A. Douglas will become one of the most important men in all of American history, and we're going to meet him for the first time right here. He is a take-charge type of person. He is a natural leader, and he's smart. And he's going to take this plan and he's going to carve it into 5 separate measures, 5 separate plans, 5 separate laws that Congress could vote on separately. You don't have to vote on them as a bundle. You can separate them. In this way, members of Congress would not have to support proposals or ideas that they bitterly opposed and the people who vote for them bitterly opposed, which might cause people not to vote for them. So during the 5 months of complicated bargaining, President Fillmore is going to persuade several Whig representatives to abstain, to just not even vote, just to say, I am here, but I am not voting, on measures that they oppose, on laws that they just cannot vote for. Congress is finally going to pass these 5 separate laws in August and September, and we're going to take them all together, as the original plan was known, into 5 different pieces. Each one passing with the consent of a majority, even though majority is not a majority of the full Senate. The people who voted yes outweigh the people who voted no. And of course, Fillmore is going to sign each plan, and we're going to call this the Compromise of 1850. We have solved no underlying problems. Slavery still exists. Honestly, as we'll find out in the next one, this is going to set off a whole bunch of new problems, as we talked about in this class countless times. Every solution comes with problems. The best solutions come with the smallest number or the smallest quality of problem. This one is not a small number of problems, nor is the quality of those problems small. These are going to cause a lot of great big problems, and we're going to have to deal with those not in the not too distant future. The conflict between the North and the South is not going to be finally settled, as Fillmore would say. Join in next time for the consequences of these laws, known as the Compromise of 1850.